And I have a upright conversation, like, hey, I know you get calls from other agents, promising you this and that, but like, unless they have a different market, there's really, as long as if you trust me that we're going to work hard for you, then there's no reason to necessarily have multiple agents out here trying to quote, right? And so I think ultimately just having those real conversations that can be a little bit uncomfortable, but if you have them on the front end, it just makes the back end so much better for not only the renewal, but your team.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the VIP podcast. I am so pumped that you're here hanging out with me today. And I got a great guest, a friend of mine that's coming to hang out with me and going to really blow your mind. That's some really cool stuff he's going to be talking to me about. And I just hope that you are watching this because he's a lot better looking guy than I am. If you're not, you need to go to YouTube right now and subscribe. And if you're an audio listener, make sure you subscribe wherever you're at, whether it's Apple, Spotify, iHeart, you name it. Wherever you're listening to this right now, make sure you subscribe there as well. Micah Salas, jump on in here. Get in here right now. Get in this house. How are you doing?
What's up? I'm great. I'm great, man. How are you?
Man, I am good. I am really good. Life treating you okay?
It is, yeah. Hands full with some little kids, and insurance, keeping clients happy, finding new clients, but no, it's all good. It's
So
all good.
talk to me. You talking about with kids and whatnot. You know, you've got a boy and a girl, or do you have
Yep.
a boy
Yeah.
and a girl? Okay.
Yep. Little boy, his name's Koa. He's about to be 11 months, and then our girl's Lucia. She's just turned 4. So
Yeah, so obviously we're not going to play the favorites game. Have you found that it's easier raising one gender than another, or like is one of your kids been easier to raise than the other one? Or
man,
as far as like sleeping or, walking or
yeah,
talking?
there's definitely a difference between boys and girls for
Yeah.
sure. But Lucia was kind of a little tomboy, just this little man, just spitfire, and so I think she kind of prepped us for having a boy, but she's still into princesses and all that stuff. But her brother seems more chill, more laid back in certain areas, which is kind of nice. She's a little bit more strong-willed, I think.
There
Maybe
you
that's just
go.
being the first. I don't know. So
So I got two girls and a boy. Do you embrace the girl dad thing? Are you good with the whole
oh,
princess crowns and playing makeup and doing the Barbies and whatever else they're into?
oh yeah, I'm pretending to be the Beast right now, and she's Beauty or Belle.
That is awesome.
So
I
yeah,
absolutely love that. Man, that's really cool, man.
yeah, it's
Absolutely.
fun. It's fun.
Yeah, dude. So for those that don't know, I wanted to bring Micah in just because, I've had an opportunity throughout my career, 20 plus years in the industry, of talking to a lot of producers and being in a lot of agencies. And, Micah, you're going to blush and be all humble about it, but you're probably one of the best producers that I've seen out there. And so I'd love to talk to you about, just high level, like what's been the key to your success and maybe like how, that's translated in this industry. Like what kind of things have you found that's helped you to be successful in this industry so far?
Oh man, I think a couple things. I think one is just being this. Some of this is going to be basic, but
But sure.
organized.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, organized because you can be disciplined and all this, which is a huge thing too. Like, for me, it's been integrating prospecting as a daily discipline. Like every day doing the numbers that I need to do to be successful. But if I'm not organized, then that's really tough to do. So for me, it was, using a CRM system, which is crazy that people wouldn't do that for me, but I've been around agencies a long time. There's a lot of folks that don't use it. I'm like, how do you prospect? How do you follow up with people? How do you do all that stuff without that? And they're like, well, I use Outlook or I use a, Excel spreadsheet. If that works for you, great. But for me, that doesn't work. And so I think what's led to consistency is just being disciplined, sticking to the basics, and then using a tool like it's just a CRM system, just to stay organized. And then beyond that, just I think always kind of trying to learn. You know what I mean? Trying to
Yeah.
stay on top of I do the CIC stuff. I mean, I'm always reading articles, trying to just just be a sponge, right? Soaking up stuff in the industry that I can then share with clients. So yeah, that's probably what I would say. When
Well,
you get down to the basics.
one of the things that you had brought up that I think is one of the reasons why I do feel like you're one of the better, producers I've seen out there is a lot of producers won't take the time to be organized. And, a lot of them are like, myself when I was a producer, just squirrel. They're everywhere. And, their minds run here. They're trying to get to the next deal. They're trying to get here. They got appointments left and right and cold calls and drop ins and whatnot. Was that something that was foundational for you early in life or something early in your career? If someone told you or something happened to you, a lesson maybe learned of like, I got to stay on top of my stuff or, it's not going to be working out for me.
Before you answer that, I just have to say, aren't you still like that, Heath? Are
Oh,
you
yeah.
still like squirrel all the time?
I am 100% that way. I ran
Uh,
in here literally 30 seconds before we started this interview. So, yeah, I struggle with that sometimes. But, thanks for calling me out, OMC.
Sorry.
But yeah, no, I would love to hear, was that something that was instilled in you or
yeah,
something you learned from a hard lesson or just you knew you had to do?
man. So I would say it's kind of a little bit of both. My dad, former Marine growing up, and he was just like a more of a morning person. So like get up early, did his thing. And I think I just saw that and learned from a lot of that. And so like I was in middle school, I was already lifting weights and as soon as I could, right? Sixth grade, getting up early, go lift weights. All throughout high school, I was on the football team, all that stuff. You're kind of doing all that and you're setting the foundation for your day. And so that was just like there wasn't really an option. It was just like this is what you work out, right? And so that was from like a discipline standpoint. A bunch of guys in high school, middle school, this was back in early 2000s, didn't necessarily work out. But I said, hey, if I want to be good, you got to do that in the off season, right? So then I get to college, and that kind of goes out the window a little bit. But my first job in insurance, which it's been now, I think 2011, so 14 years ago in February, I started with Federated, which is a direct writer.
Oh,
But
yeah.
the one there's some other things I learned, but the biggest takeaway was they had something called the business plan, right? Follow the business plan. And it was kind of ingrained in your skull, like do these things, and it's a roadmap to success. And so I always took that with me. And even when I left there and became an independent agent, it was like, hey, you got to have some type of plan to follow every day. Because if you don't, man, you know how it is.
Oh, yeah.
It goes at you fast. It gets out
And
of control quickly.
being second generation, one of the things that my dad taught me early on, and despite Chad's calling me out earlier, but one of the things that I always learned from my dad was, Dad always said, to plan your work and work your plan. And I was always good at planning my work, but working my plan sometimes, I'd get distracted with this or that, and so I could totally understand where you're coming from there, and I think it's pretty awesome that you're able to do that. And so having that military background, so to speak, in that household. Was that something that you found easy once you got in insurance, or with all these other distractions, all these different things? Because you're wearing a lot of different hats as a producer, and you're probably a CSR at times, an account manager at times, and a janitor at times. You got a
Yep.
lot going on there. Is that something that you found difficult as you transition out of high school and college into insurance?
You know what? For me, I was never the most talented person at anything I did. I always tell like I'm like a top 30% guy. So I'm not like at the bottom of the spectrum, but I'm never top where it's like purely just talent, and
Sure,
we all know those people. And so I had to always kind of work hard to get to any type of results I wanted to get. And so I think for me, it kind of became like this is just what I have to do, right? There's just
sure.
no, and it's kind of just now it's so ingrained, like there's no option. I get messages all the time from people like, how do you have time to make, you know, 40 calls, let alone 20 calls in a day? And I'm like, oh, it's just what I have to do. And you got to be organized, right? It kind of comes back to the basics. Still, you
Yeah.
still got to be organized, got to have a plan. And if you are, there's a lot more time in the day than I think people realize. But yeah, so for me, I would say it comes I'm a fairly disciplined person.
So
So
are
it's
you a non-negotiables kind of guy?
no, man, I have some room for nuance. And I was just talking on the Max Revenue podcast this morning that I do with Trey, and I was saying, like the last couple of weeks, I haven't hit my numbers that I wanted to hit from a call standpoint. I'm not sitting here beating myself up like, oh my gosh, like,
Sure.
so I'm not hardcore, but I I I just find it, I guess, from an intrinsic standpoint, I generally stick to plans I create,
Yeah. There's certain those
Um,
people like my non-negotiables, and that's what it sounded like maybe for you. Like I'm gonna make these 40 calls, or I'm gonna make these 10 calls a day, or I'm gonna do whatever it might be.
yep.
But no, I believe you probably should have some of those nuances in there. But some of those non-negotiables sound like something maybe your father might have entrenched in you and whatnot too. But
Yeah.
I would ask it just from a,
Yeah.
because what you said about you're kind of in the middle of the road there with not trying to be an overachiever, but do you find when it comes to those points in your career where you're like kind of like I feel like I'm just stuck or not getting ahead, do you just fall back to your 101 training in your head and go, okay, I just got to go back to the basics?
Yeah, shameless plug time.
Shameless plug. Accelerate 2025 is rolling into Charlotte.
I see what you did there. Roll it into Charlotte.
rolling
I like
into
that.
Charlotte. The theme this year,
Yeah.
if you didn't already guess,
Give it to me.
Accelerate towards success, because NASCAR Hall of Fame is located in Charlotte.
Heck
We're going to
yeah.
be there May 6th through the 9th.
Yes.
You need to sign up now.
Yep.
Time is running out.
In Charlotte, we're bringing you into the tech hub for champions. Close your eyes, picture it, surrounded by the latest InsurTech, live demos, hands-on environment where you can test drive. See what I did there? Test drive the Vertafore's newest tools and upgrades. Whether you're looking to supercharge your agency.
Maybe you don't want to do it with your eyes closed. You told them to close their eyes.
Oh, that's true. If you're driving right now or running on a treadmill, open your eyes.
Yeah, open your eyes.
Tighten up your tech game, optimize your distribution management. This is where you're going to find your edge.
And
Drum roll.
the speaker this year, our main stage keynote speaker,
Uh-oh.
Olympic gold medalist,
Uh-oh.
Michael Phelps.
No! That's incredible. So if you're ready to put your business on the fast track to success, join us in May in Charlotte, Accelerate 2025, and get ready to shift your agency into high gear.
Yeah, spot on. Anytime I'm stuck or I feel like, man, I'm in a desert in terms of production, I do go back. Like this year, actually, specifically. So my first year or two as an independent agent, back in 2014, 15, I did keep stats, right? I kept calling stats of everyone every day. I'd log in. Here's how many calls I made. Here's who I talked to, meeting set. And I got away from it because I just got so ingrained. I was like, I don't need to keep doing this.
Yeah.
Well, fast forward to this year, I was like, I should probably start that again. And I started that back in January, the 1st of January this year. And it does, getting back to the basics, it kind of just reinforced that. And it's like, all right, when you write it down and you look at it, that does help me kind of stick to that plan. But yeah, it always does come down to basics, I think. And sometimes I think we say that at risk of like oversimplifying it, but I think we're more prone to making it too complex than too simple, I think, as producers. It's like,
Yeah.
just get back to the basics, control what you can,
Sure.
follow your plan, and the rest is it's in God's hands, I guess, right? There's so much we can't
100%.
control. So
But as you said, even this year, as you've started going back to some of those basic things, and you've already mentioned it once, and we're on a technology podcast, but how crucial is that CRM piece for you? Making sure you have all of those, notes added in or prospects added in, and all the different funnels and pipelines and whatnot. Is that something that's vital, almost a non-negotiable for you in that area too?
that is I would call it a non-negotiable, is using that. I mean, leveraging it. For me, it's creating the follow-up task, taking notes, putting in your notes after every call, just doing those two things, right? Logging it and then creating a follow-up task. And if I can do those two, I'll be fine.
But that's where going back to the basics, that CRM system does like help you do the basics. And then once it's like it's like riding a bike after you've done it 15 times,
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
I think you're spot on there. And I also think, one of the things that, and again, I've stepped in a lot of agencies' offices, and I've got to talk to a lot of agents on webinars and podcasts and whatnot. And I'm sure you've trained and talked to a lot of agents through your, different ventures and podcasts and whatnot. Have you found that's one of the biggest hurdles that producers have coming in, is adopting the technology, adopting the CRM, and finding those fundamentals and making them, not making them work, but helping them help them, help you, help me, help you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, that's an interesting question. I think I've seen that more as a problem or occurring with people who are older a little bit, like
Yeah.
the guys who came from the 90s and let's say the 90s, early 2000s, and they were at an agency, they were acquired. They were maybe sitting around on a certain size book, and now they've got acquired by a bigger agency, and they're like, hey, we want some more production out of you or whatever. But the agents are kind of stuck in a rut because they're like, well, they're kind of just exclusively depending on networking and referrals. And it gets them to a certain point, but not beyond that. And so they never really had to use a CRM, maybe, right? They just kind of, I know this guy, and there's 10 people they're keeping track of that they're talking to at the moment. But with younger people, I would say we're definitely, I don't meet too many guys in their 20s who are not using a CRM or would want to use a CRM, right? So
Sure.
I think it's more on the other end of the spectrum, like the guys that kind of just feel stuck, guys
Yeah.
and gals who feel stuck and hadn't had to use one in the past, but now are like, okay, I need a little bit of help here, a little organization, because the old way I did it isn't working as maybe good as it used to, or it's
Sure.
not helping me get the results I want to get, right?
And one of the things that, and if nobody's following, I'd try to find Micah if I were you on LinkedIn, because I noticed, you put a lot of content out there, and it's a lot of content aimed at, your prospects and your clients and whatnot, where you see a lot of insurance people out there aiming content at other producers and other CR, whatever it
Yep,
might be.
sure.
And, you know, for you, that takes a lot. I imagine that takes a lot of trust building, and that takes a lot of things that you're doing that for with your clients. Is that something that's been, because a lot of salespeople just want to come in, sell, 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 close, close, close. You seem to be a guy that's about client experience first and about educating your clients and about doing those kind of things. Was that something from the beginning, or was that a mindset shift halfway through, or somewhere in the lineup there?
Yeah, this might sound cheesy, but like,
We
so
love cheese.
I never wanted to be, me too, I'm from Wisconsin. Um,
Love it.
I never wanted to be in sales. Like I hated sales. And so coming out of college, had, I went to school for business and I had two offers basically on the table. One insurance, selling insurance. One was go work for the federal government, being a claims adjuster, something like that. And I was like, oh, I'll take the federal government job. It's safer. It's a little higher base salary.
Sure.
Be kind of cush. I get to live in my city, do all my fun things. And I got in there, and realized it sucked, right? And so
Right.
2 or 3 weeks later, I was trying to find a job out. Well, I think we got a sales job. That thing folded up, but and then it led me to insurance 2 years later. I went back to the company that I had walked away from. And anyways, I say all that to say that like never wanted to be in sales. I always liked helping people. And so you asked about, like client experience and honestly what it's like I said, it sounds cheesy or whatever, but it's just real is I enjoy helping people. And uh and so that comes with clients, right? I think it's fun to help them solve problems, to help them improve their insurance experience. And then with prospects, right? That's kind of my passion. Like, who can I find out there that needs help? That's literally my guiding light every day. I'm trying to get out there and find those people because there's a lot of them out there. And so yeah,
And I want to
that's
say that
my thing.
you've kind of written a book on this as well. Did I am I saying that right? That you put a book out aimed at some of your prospects and clients?
I did. It was called the Business Insurance Playbook, or it's called that. And it's a super simple read, probably 30 minutes on purpose because I knew people don't want to read about insurance. And yeah, I published, so it was all towards, hey, how can I help a prospect improve their experience, right? And because I was just seeing a lot of challenges around just understanding how insurance works. Like, hey, I try to get quotes. Why is this all these issues happening with blocking of markets? Like just the
Yeah,
basics. And it seems basic to us on the inside, but there's a lot of business owners out there who just don't get it. And so that's what the book was for, helping them understand how their premiums are kind of derived and how to reduce costs on a higher level and just how to manage their insurance, how to pick an agent, just basic topics like that. I wasn't going to get out there and write a book on like, technical forms and exclusions and all that. That wasn't really what I thought would be appealing to
sure.
to my client and
Okay, so
prospect. But
But on the front end, obviously that book was written aimed at prospects and aimed at future clients. But on the back end, a lot of that is powered by technology. You mentioned you didn't want to get all the technical, but on the back end of that, that is powered by a lot of that. And so, again, I would love to hear some of that as far as front end. That experience is beautiful, seamless for them. But what they don't realize is what all's going on behind the scenes with your tech stack and what you've got going on. And so, could you talk to me a little bit about that? You don't have to necessarily name your tech stack, but what
sure.
all you are using. And so maybe some people listening right now can say, "Hey, wait, I'm not doing that," or "Oh yeah, I am doing that. Maybe I can improve these things."
Yeah. Are you talking about my tech stack more from a prospecting standpoint or managing clients and like
Either
servicing?
or, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So from a prospecting angle, it's the CRM.
Yep.
So having a good quality CRM that you know, like, and can use well and understand. And then, there's companies out there that can help scrub data.
Sure.
I've used companies to help with calling and emailing. So from a tech side of things, and there's email campaigns and all that I haven't done, but I know some producers out there who have killed it on
Yeah.
email campaigns, and they're good with the tech side of that. Um, so that's kind of like from a prospecting where I've seen tech be leveraged the best. Client side of it, I mean, I use it, the basics, just again, CRM,
Yeah.
renewals, managing that process, and then if you want to like webinars and quarterly updates and making sure they're getting their email, the staying in the know,
Yeah.
that's a big one. Um, and then there's for now technology has gotten further and further where there's forms you can fill out electronically or applications, anything you can do to lessen the friction and make it easier for the client, I think is key, right? So I don't know
Yeah.
if that,
No, that's perfect.
yeah,
Friday, I spent some time with a couple hundred producers at an event with my wife, and every single, I shouldn't say every single one, but majority of those producers, CSRs, account managers that were talking to me in some way, form, or fashion, they all said the same thing of, man, we are burnt out. This market is crushing my soul. Or, this market is really tough to navigate. My clients are expecting this and expecting that, or they're questioning this. And, that trust building we talked about a minute ago is a little more difficult right now. But I
yeah,
wonder with you, obviously you're seeing some of those challenges. I'm not saying you're above those, but obviously you've got some things set up in place and you're doing some different things. Maybe are there some of those challenges you're dealing with, and maybe how are you, handling some of those challenges of, the hard market and producers, not producers, but your clients saying this or that?
yeah, it's a real challenge. I mean, and I get why teams are burnt out because as a producer, you don't want to lose an account. So you're telling your team like, hey, maybe we don't shop every year in the past, but now it's like we got to look, to
Yeah,
defend ourselves, right? To
100%.
keep the client. And so I think how I try to go at that and soften the blow a little bit is, man, I still, and this comes back to basics, but it's like 90 to 120 days out, somewhere in that time frame, depending on the size of the account. As a producer, you should be having I call it a pre-renewal strategy meeting or something with that client, right? Some type of communication that's not just, hey, hey, what's your new sales going to be? What's your new payrolls? Not just like gathering exposure data, but actually having an in-depth conversation with them. And I call it a strategic meeting or a strategic planning meeting, something that lets the client know, like, hey, Micah's on it. He's already thinking about my
Yep,
renewal. And in that meeting, you discuss hey, what's going on in the market. What
sure.
am I seeing? Hey, how are you happy with your current carrier? If we do shop, like, what would you even move for? Having those conversations and be like,
Yeah.
hey, we're an independent agent. I can shop anywhere you want.
But
You don't
what's your
need to
pain
talk to other
point?
people. Yeah, correct, correct. And so it's like you could, and I have a upright conversation, be like, hey, I mean, I know you get calls from other agents, promising you this and that, but like, unless they have a different market, there's really, as long as if you trust me that we're going to work hard for you, then there's no reason to necessarily have multiple agents out here trying to quote, right? And so I think ultimately just having those real conversations that can be a little bit uncomfortable, but if you have them on the front end, it just makes the back end so much better for not only the renewal but your team. Like, hey, now you can go back and tell your service person like, hey, there's just one market we got to go to this year. I kind of got it whittled down, or no, I thought, this year
Yeah.
he's not going to shop, but let's get our numbers 40 days out. If we can get those out, he's promised to stay if we can get about here. So anything you could do to help, it makes a big difference.
Yeah. And, and I didn't ask this earlier just for context. I know the answer, but just for the context for the audience listening, tell your percentage of commercial to personal lines in your book.
And I'm like 99% commercial.
I mean, I knew that,
Yeah,
but I
yeah,
wanted to make sure the audience knew
yeah.
that. So when you're talking commercial, you're talking about educating that client experience. Are you spending time educating them on, whether it's building prices going up or labor costs going up or, supply and demand issues? Are you having those conversations with them, or that kind of they understand some of that, or is it a little bit of both?
I assume they don't understand anything,
Good for you.
or
Good for
the
you.
only information they're hearing is from other competitors out there trying to get their foot in the door. And so one thing I usually bring to these meetings, I go on, like, all the big agencies do this, the wholesalers, they'll print out like the market outlook or
Mhm.
whatever. And so I print whatever the most recent one is, and I bring that in and I just highlight just a one page, hey, here's the auto, just so they can see it's not me saying this. This is what the industry as a whole. And then of course I add my context. Here's what I'm seeing in my book. Here's what I'm seeing locally here in Austin. And yeah, talking through that. So I
All
think
right.
people appreciate it.
I have a question, and just maybe before we wrap up here is, um, from the overall commercial side of things, is there one or two things that you could give advice to a CRM about? Make sure you have these specific things in place before you make that call, or here's the things that will help you win, those types of things.
Yeah. Now you say CRM, you're talking about like client relationship manager, right?
Well,
Or CSR,
or
account
CSR,
manager.
whichever,
Oh,
when
okay.
you're dealing with clients.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to make sure. I was like,
yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't know
No,
if you were
you're
talking
good.
about like from a tech programming. Um, so two things that I would say, hey, know this before you call somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say one thing is going to be uh, uh,
Sorry to put you on the spot.
punctuality. Yeah. I mean, punctuality on it. So I don't know if it's saying anything, but it's like almost calling that person saying, your renewal is coming up in 120 days. We're planning. We need to set up a time to talk or to discuss kind of our strategy or our plan for the renewal. You know, that's, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's like the biggest thing for
Yeah,
me, I think. And then knowing just what, again, uh, knowing the market locally, because the national stuff I was talking about, the US, the reports that are across the US, those don't
yeah,
necessarily speak to a local market. So it's like,
sure.
hey, here, so it's also knowing those markets, right? Hey, we have you with travelers. There's four other markets. Here's who they are. Here's kind of the history. Here's what we've done in the past. You know, just want to talk through what do you want to do this year? And here's the downside of shopping every year, so I guess kind of just having that knowledge and maybe sharing that with the client of like, hey, here's some other markets that
And
are out
so
there that are
when they
relevant.
get off that phone, it's like, man, Micah already knew. He was already ahead of it. He already, predicted what was going to happen. He's already done the work for me. I feel comfortable with the Christensen Group because they know. Almost like,
Correct.
oh, he's got a crystal ball. He already knows what's going on. But really, in the back end, you've done your work. You've got your technology working for you, things of that nature.
Yeah, and here's the thing, it sounds simple, but as a producer, you start to add, dozens of clients. You got 30 to 100 clients, somewhere in that range, and all of a sudden you got a CSR you're working with. You're like, hey, just let's get the exposure information. I'm just going to flip
Yeah,
this quick to my client, and that starts to happen, right? And it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It's just human nature. We get
sure.
complacent, things fall through the cracks, and then next thing you know, you lose a client or something. Um, so yeah,
Well,
it's
it sounds like you specifically, and I don't know about the Christensen Group in general, but you specifically like to be real hands on with your clients and you like to be involved with them. And a lot of, these clients right now, they're looking for a self-service kind of a situation, or they want to be able to do certain things. And again, it takes things off of your plate or your account manager's plates. Are you at the Christensen Group, are you, personally open to whether it be an app or open to somewhere where they could go online and, do some self-service, maybe print their own certificates or maybe get their own endorsements on, maybe do their own whatever it might be. Are you down with that kind of stuff, or are you still wanting to be able to say, "Hey, no, call me and I'll take care of that for you"?
Yeah, no, I am 100% I'm down with that. I think a lot of it depends on the buyer.
Okay,
Because some of them are like still under the premise of I want someone to do that for me. That's
sure,
why I have you.
yeah,
And
yeah,
there's also a newer wave of buyers coming in there like, if it's easy and intuitive, great. Let me do it myself.
yeah,
And so it just depends on who the buyer is. And you got to kind of be a chameleon. I do feel like more of the younger folks or people at least in their 30s and down or even low 40s kind of a lot of times I'll offer like, hey, we can do an application together on the phone, or I can just send it to you and you can fill it out. And they're like, no, let me just fill it out myself first. I'll take a crack at it, then I'll call you if I need help. That where the older
yep.
generation is more like, yeah, let's meet up or let's go through it together. So it just depends. But yeah,
I
no, I think
gotcha.
all that stuff could really help
Kind of
save.
finding that what you were saying there, kind of being a chameleon, is kind of like you have to become an expert overnight with some of these things, especially when it
Yep.
comes to different clients that you have, and especially with commercial, you sort of have to know what they do to be able to speak the language and, get them on the right page.
And that's where a lot of that data comes from you have in your CRM and your AMS and some of that kind of stuff to be able to go look back on that and say, okay, based on this history, based on your class of business.
Yeah. Yeah, no, or it's we talk about Chat GPT and AI or whatever, and it's like
Yeah.
I've had meetings where prepping for a meeting, I'm calling on kind of a class of business I'm not too familiar. I'll just type in there like, hey, if I was this class, what are my top risks? What should I be
Yeah.
concerned with from insurance? And then all of a sudden I'll get like boom, 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 like 10 things right there that really help me just prep for that meeting
Sure.
quickly. Um, so it's yeah,
We started
the
talking
more info,
about
the
AI.
better.
This thing's going to go longer.
Yeah.
now.
So before, I don't want to get too off on that because we love
Yeah.
talking about that here. But, one of the last things I wanted to ask you about was, and guys, after you listen to the VIP podcast here, the Vertafore Insurance podcast, you can go check out the Max Revenue podcast. You guys have done some really cool stuff there, and you've been recording now for a little while now. What are some of the biggest things that you've learned? Because that's been a really neat podcast. I've been an avid listener and just kind of seeing the evolution of that, and you being the experienced guy, and this, your co-host being someone kind of newer to that with the prospecting and learning from you. What are some things that you've kind of learned from that and heard from that, and maybe some feedback you've gotten from that?
I think, man, I think some of the biggest feedback I get is people are hungry. People are, when I say people, producers are hungry, especially younger producers. They feel like they're on an island. They feel like they got no one to help them, whether
Yeah.
because their agency doesn't have the resources or whatever the reason is. I don't know. Or the people that are hired aren't necessarily speaking the language they want to hear. I don't know. But that's the biggest thing. So I think people just appreciate having people that are kind of in the trenches talk with them, and people are just hungry to get better. They want to sharpen their skills at selling the mid-market insurance space. So that's and the other thing I've learned is, man, we can get dogmatic about how to have success, I think sometimes. Uh, and there's a lot of different ways to be successful. So, whether it's, I don't know, whether it's how to get new business. Some people are hardcore AOR, BOR only. Some people are hardcore quote only. Some people are in the middle. Some people want to prospecting only phones, only email, or I do all networking. I've just come to the conclusion, like, however works for you, you got to know your numbers, find a system, stick to it, and make it work. But I've seen it work really well in various ways for people. So I just encourage people to be kind of more open. And if you're not happy with where you're at, talk to the people who are successful and maybe they're doing something differently and try it. But whatever you do, you got to stick to it. You got to be disciplined. Full circle moment here. Got to be disciplined. Got to stick to
Exactly.
it. Yeah.
Love that. And
Yeah.
it goes back to breaking that cycle of this is the way we've always done things. And that's kind of been the old adage with insurance since, I've been in it 22 years. So I get that. So, man, I appreciate it. One of the things, that I love is when I've listened, there's days you'll come in and you'll talk about some success stories, how you crushed it on this or that. And there's days you'll honestly come in and say, man, I didn't do this today. Or, I'm kicking myself that I had a bad couple of days I didn't, but here's what I learned from that, or here's a lesson that I did do. And it's just encouraging to hear that here's an incredible producer in Micah Salas that he makes mistakes too. He has issues too, but then you'll tell that success story. Well, a week later, I'm back on the track. I'm back on the train, and I just landed 5 new appointments next week, and I'm going to close these. And so it's cool to see you lay out the playbook and be so transparent about it. So thank you for that. And
Thanks, man.
thank you for joining. It's one of those things, as you know, you and I have known each other for a long time, but being podcast people, like, people can feel like they know you and they've never met you before. Just like people could talk to me on the streets, like, man, Heath, what's up? And I'm like, who are you again? But like, it's fun to know. So I appreciate you being that way because I feel like I've gotten to know you even better listening to that show. Thank you for being here. Hopefully the audience feels like they know you a little bit better. But again, I appreciate you being here hanging out with us today.
Hey, man, glad to be on. Thanks for having me. And just glad I could be a guest. So
Yeah, dude,
appreciate it.
thank you. And audience, thank you so much. Again, go and smash that subscribe button. Make sure that you check out Micah on LinkedIn, and make sure that you find us anywhere that you're listening to podcasts. And I will see you on the next one.